All right. Well, we're going to kick it off today. Again, thank you so much for joining us for our next Community Plus Values Community Leadership Conversation with Chancellor Haefner and Provost Clark, and moderated by Stephanie O'Malley, a community driven by purpose. So over the last few years, as we all know, it's been incredibly busy, incredibly challenging. We've been thinking with a sense of urgency, but we really want to take stock and remember our whys in this conversation. Why do our leaders do what they do? What drives them to get up in the morning? And what do they love most about DU? And so today, we're excited to hear from the Chancellor and Provost and Stephanie and talk about their whys, how we can all stay in connection to our greater purpose as the members of the community of DU and our mission as the community that we are a part of. And so they'll dig into what they're excited about, why they love being part of the DU community, what makes them, and how we can all stay in positive communication with one another and celebrate the people that make all of this possible here in the DU community. And so first, I do want to start with a land acknowledgement. We intentionally do this at the beginning of every C+V event to make sure and acknowledge that and take a moment in the spirit of healing and peace to acknowledge and honor the indigenous peoples of the land upon which the University of Denver stands, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes. Like the history of so many institutions in the American West, ours is complex and sometimes painful. In recognition of this fact, and to underscore our commitment to inclusion and equity, we commit to listen to and affirm the stories of all in our community. We do invite listeners to visit the DU Native American Indigenous Initiative's website to learn more about this. And with that being said, I am excited to hand it over to Stephanie O'Malley. Stephanie will be our facilitator today. She is a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado and serves as the Associate Vice Chancellor of Government Relations and Community Affairs for DU. In her role, she supports the University of Denver by building effective partnerships between the university and federal, state, and local governments, as well as community residents, businesses, and nonprofits. She is an integral piece of DU's advocacy for university needs, interests, and its mission to serve the public good. And Stephanie is also a graduate of the Sturm College of Law as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Stephanie, and we're super excited for the conversation. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chase, and thank you for allowing me to be here today to facilitate this very important dialogue and conversation. I am happy to do so. And with that, I think we'll just jump right in because we certainly want to save some time for some Q&A on the back end of the session here today. So where I wanted to start it, community, big word that includes big responsibility. And we've all been through a lot over the past couple of years as a community. And so sometimes I think it's just important for us to slow down, take a deep breath as a community together. So this space today is meant exactly for that. And Jeremy, you mentioned when I first started here at the university that a community is someone like an electrical circuit. And it's important to uncover that circuit, to strip back all of it, and to get to know what's going on underneath. So as we kick things off today, I just want to ask both you and our provost, how are you doing? Simple question, how are you doing? How have you both been navigating these past couple of years and experiences?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And let me just give great thanks to Chase and the C+V team, and to you, Stephanie, for participating on this, and for all of you who are joining us today. It's a delight to have this moment in time on a very sunny, beautiful day here in Denver after several inches of snow that we received. It reminds us of where we are. How am I doing? Well, that's a question I don't get every day, but I will first start off by simply saying I'm doing really, really well. And I say that because I always want to keep in the back of my mind what an honor and a privilege it is to be in this role and to be at this university. It's a incredible opportunity that I have, and I realize the privilege that I bring by having this role. And I always want to keep that in the forefront of my mind. And that doesn't mean there aren't good and bad days. There are, of course, but I do try to really seek out this balance between the mind and the body and the soul. And the mind is where I work today. The body is why I am so active physically, and that how much that is rewarding to me. And then the soul is my family, and how important that is. But I also wouldn't be honest with the community if I didn't also say that I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit tired of COVID, like I think we all are. I'm tired of not having the freedoms that we so enjoyed before the pandemic. And I do look forward to what appears to be a lightening of the pandemic and a move towards fewer protocols that we have currently. They're established for our health and safety, and they have served us extraordinarily well. And I want to just pause and thank the community, because without the community complying with all these protocols, we wouldn't be in the position that we are today. I'm also optimistic. I'm so optimistic about the direction of the university. The celebration of achieving the very high research classification from the Carnegie organization is a highlight, not just in a career of an individual, but it's a highlight of the university and how special it is for all of us. And that leads me to the fact that I'm energized, because I think there are some exciting things ahead, including the mountain campus and the four-dimensional experience. But most importantly, to answer your question, I am so grateful, and I know my colleague, Provost Clark, will echo this, so grateful to the community of what they have done over the last several years to navigate a very challenging time and still move this campus and university forward. Without this community, we would not be in the sound footing that you find the University of Denver where we are today, and with an exciting direction on that. So that's how I would say how I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot can resonate with some of the things you've shared about fatigue and just wanting to get to the next chapter after COVID, and really, staying in tune with our mind, our body, and our souls. And I appreciate you sharing about those things. And so with that, Provost Clark, would you mind sharing with us, how are you doing?
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and I'm delighted to do so. And I will echo the Chancellor in thanking you and thanking Chase and Hiba and all of the C+V supporters for hosting this program today. When I was reflecting on your first question, I would say I'm doing well, thank you. And I'd say I'm doing well because I have really been able to focus on family and work during this time, and really throughout my life. What I've focused on is family and work, and I think that probably reflects the experience of many of our community members. I'll share as the relative newcomer on this screen that I have found the DU community to be extraordinarily warm and welcoming. I have basically only been here during the COVID era, starting in July 2020, and I have found this community to be enormously welcoming and warm and supportive. And as the Chancellor indicated earlier, it is a community of care. I have seen that demonstrated so many times and by so many people. Last night, I was meeting with the students who support our COVID testing sites and our Spit Lab effort. And there's a whole consortium of students who are being led by Dr. Nancy Lorenzen and by Dr. Sarah Wadamura and Dr. Corrine Lengsfeld. And their commitment to our university was palpable and is just a real testament to our community and to our university. And so I echo the Chancellor in saying just how grateful I am and what a enormously positive attribute that is of our community. It gives me great optimism for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And with that, with the recognition that not only in the past couple of years, but just in our lives generally, we all fly very, very fast, seemingly in our responsibilities, both with our family and our personal spaces. And so I just was curious about what makes it all more important to remain connected to what grounds you in your whys. What are your whys? What can you tell us about your whys? What keeps you going? Who keeps you going? What informs your decisions here as DU leaders? And why do you like being a part of the DU community? And feel free to share, any type of story or vignette from your personal life and experiences. And Provost Clark, I'll start with you this time.
Terrific. So I think the why for me is all about access to opportunity. It'll probably come as a surprise to no one that I've always loved school. I've always loved school. I'm that kid on the first day of kindergarten. I have a big grin on my face because I'm off to school. I have always loved school, and I want to provide that opportunity and that access to opportunity to all of our community members, whether they be students, faculty, or staff. Again, as provost, I want to ensure that we have a top flight academic experience for our students, for our faculty, for our staff. For me, that is at the core of our mission as a university, and it's surely at the core of the work that I do. You asked about biographical background. I'm reflecting on my parents. My mother recently passed away, and my father shortly before that. And for my parents, access to higher education was transformative for their lives. They were the first in their families to go to college, and they conveyed that sense of delight in access to opportunity. They both had full scholarships to go to college, and they wanted to ensure that my brother and I had that access to opportunity through higher education. And so that's been conveyed to me from the earliest age. And that's what I wish to act upon in my role as provost. I'm, again, enormously excited about education and learning and the development of new knowledge. And I want to make sure that others have access to that opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you. And Chancellor Haefner, as our leader, what are your whys? What keeps you going? And what are your experiences that you'd like to share relative to your whys?
Oh, well, absolutely. And as I was listening to Mary, I was remarking at this, the overlaps and the similarities so much. But this is really a great question, and it does keep coming up, not necessarily directly, but in the back of my mind, and a lot of different times I have conversations on them. Higher education is so integral to who I am. I have spent my entire life in higher education, and my family is, like Mary's family, really dedicated to learning as well. In fact, all of us are educators. All of us found their careers in higher education, and I think a lot of that is due to the modeling that my father did. He was a professor at the University of Iowa for 45 years in the College of Education. And so much of my imprint of higher education is through his experiences and how important that was. So obviously I deeply believe in what we're doing here at the University of Denver. We're really developing the lives of future generations of individuals who will all go out and change the world and be a part of our communities. But in doing so, we do it in a way where, as Mary referred to it, the intellectual stimulation, the excitement of discovering new ideas, whether they're new to us or new to the world, because that's what research is all about.
Mhm.
And as Mary said, the opportunity to have access to this is all part of this. And then at the final analysis, it's about improving the human condition. We're doing that every day. It's incredibly noble profession that we're all engaged with, from the custodian all the way up to the faculty, to even the chancellor, to the trustees. Right? It's really, really important work. And I was thinking of two examples that I wanted to share regarding this question. One is a personal one, right? To this day, I will never forget the moment that I had my aha moment when I was in my PhD program. And I had discovered the solution to the mathematical problem that had vexed a lot of mathematicians. And the joy that I felt in that discovery remains with me today. And I will never forget how unabashed I was with my joy as I rushed back to my PhD advisor's office without knocking, opened the door and said, "I have the answer." And I could have gotten in a lot of trouble because I don't know what he was doing behind that door. So anyway, I did learn my lesson to knock first after that. But the other example is just happened the other day. I was walking across campus from North to back to Mary Read, and a student recognized me. He must have either seen the Converse shoes or my gray hair, one of the two. And he came up and he opened up a conversation, which I thought was so emblematic of our students, right? They have this courage that is manifest in a variety of different ways. But what he shared with me, of course, was his journey to the University of Denver, right? And he was an international student, and he's got his undergraduate degree at the University of Nebraska, a great school. And he came to the University of Denver as a graduate student in the Daniels College of Business. He was so excited about what he was learning, about his next adventure. He had already a job lined up after doing an internship this previous summer. But that joy, that sense of completion was just apparent in all of his conversation. And what a delightful conversation he had with me. And to me, I went back to my office with a spring in my step, because I realized that's why we're here, right? That's why we're here, to give that student that sense of joy, that learning, and that opportunity. So that's the why for me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Those are great whys, and gives us all some energy to reflect on our own personal whys as we continue in our journeys as a community here at DU and beyond the DU walls. One of the things that you both mentioned had to do with curiosity and inquiry, and as a community, of course, as an institution of higher education, we focus on these things. And so with constant curiosity, we all have and are committed as a community to academic freedom, to intellectual inquiry, and the respectful exchange of ideals. We can see this show up in a variety of ways here on our campus, through learning, through teaching, as you said, Chancellor Haefner, through research and service at DU, through our 4D experience, which we're focused on right now. And so my question is, how can we as a community approach sometimes civil discourse or discourse that comes as a result of having differences of opinions or philosophies that often present themselves while we're in our communal experiences inside these different environments? So what ways, can we have that discourse in a respectful way? What does this look like to each of you? And Chancellor Haefner, I'll start with you this time.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Well, in many respects, this is so related to my question, or the answer that I had just above, of how much I believe in the spirit, the very tenet of higher education, especially in the United States. And there's there's a number of things that are so fundamental to higher education, but I can't think of another one where it's more important than the free exchange of ideas, the intellectual pursuit of truth, whatever that might form it might take, the exchange of ideas, whether you agree with them or not, and the evidence that we should be bringing to the table. But in today's environment, right, whether it's at the national scale, the state level, or even in our own city and communities, we know that dialogue is so hard if it's happening at all. And people bringing, actual evidence to support their conversation, to support their positions is incredibly rare these days, or it's biased in one form or another. The speech can be filled with hatred. There can be silencing. There can be shaming. There can be a chilling effect that we know. And universities and colleges are not exempt from this. They really aren't. We know it's happening. There are daily examples of where free speech, academic freedom of our faculty is being challenged on a regular basis. I think of the case down in Florida where the governor would not allow faculty members of the University of Florida to testify on certain controversial issues. We hear of how faculty or students are silenced because of their views. We saw a faculty member from the University of Chicago be disinvited by MIT recently, and how much that created a controversy around that. So it's true that it's even a difficult environment that we find ourselves in the universities. And so this is the reason why I made this a major point in my inauguration address, because I am deeply concerned about it. I think this threatens the very core of what we do, this intellectual inquiry that we have. And so I'm deeply concerned about it. And I'd love for us to take some bold steps to try to address it. There's a lot of different ideas that are floating out there, but one of them is just around the nature of civil discourse, and what does it mean to be able to listen across differences, to genuinely and empathetically listen and understand the position of someone who you may disagree with. I'm really happy to hear, and perhaps Mary will talk more about it, that the Faculty Senate is taking this on in their general education, and I look forward to seeing how we might define what civil discourse is, and what does it really mean on a pragmatic basis? What are the principles behind civil discourse? Let's define what those are. I think we can always refresh our understanding of free speech and academic freedom. The university has a wonderful policy on free expression that the Faculty Senate worked very closely with the Board of Trustees on a few years ago. It was an example of great shared governance, and actually became part of the national dialogue. How many people are aware of that wonderful policy and have read it recently? Because you can get inspired by the principles that are embedded in there. And then I think you can't talk about civil discourse or free speech without talking about kind of the notion of having multiple ideas across the spectrum, and really thinking about pluralism in a way that I think embodies what the universities are all about. We're a community of a variety of different perspectives, and what we ought to do is honor and respect those different perspectives, and let those conversations happen in a very respectful and civil way. So this is really important to me, and I
can tell.
I could talk a long time, I suppose, but I will relinquish the platform to my esteemed colleague, Mary.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm not going to depart far from what you've said. As I've shared with Stephanie and with you on prior occasions, I am deeply committed to freedom of expression principles and to academic freedom principles. And for those in the audience, academic freedom principles are in many ways a subset of freedom of expression principles. Academic freedom relates to our faculty speaking on matters of expertise in the classroom or through their scholarship. I'm going to speak more broadly of freedom of expression, but I think my comments pertain to both. So I have long been an advocate of freedom of expression. I was a high school debater, and even before that in elementary school, I was involved with debate. It was then no surprise to anyone who knew me that I went into the law, became a lawyer, argued in court, ultimately became a law professor. And so through all of those experiences was enormously engaged with ideas and debate and dialogue across differences. And as I've shared with both Stephanie and Jeremy, it was with my move from being a law professor to being in the provost's office at AU, which was located on the undergraduate campus, that I really came to understand a nuance that had not been so apparent to me before. And that is that for undergraduate students, the campus is their home. This is their residence. This is where they are 24/7. And with that in mind, I became more aware of the impact that speech can have on individuals. Until that moment, my thought was the best response to speech that you find heinous or offensive is more speech. You drown out the speech you don't like with more speech. That had historically been my mindset. And then when I reflected on the fact that the campus is the home significantly for our undergraduate students, I became more aware of what it's like to live in a home with a potentially hateful speech and the harm that that could have on an individual. I can go home at the end of the day. Our undergrad students largely do not. And I think the freedom of expression principles that DU has adopted, that the Chancellor referred to earlier, very much reflect that nuanced understanding. It's an overarching commitment to freedom of expression principles, but with a nuanced understanding of the impact that hate speech in particular can have, the harmful impact it can have. And so I particularly like where DU has landed to date on the freedom of expression principles, and happy to entertain further questions or comments, but wanted to say that I think DU has really landed in the right place in terms of freedom of expression principles.
Thank you for that. And piggybacking on that, with a recognition of just the myriad of the unique types of individuals in our university community. We have a lot of different representations from different ethnic backgrounds, from different states, just from different socialization, all those type of things. And one of the most exciting things about the C+V's mission is that it involves thousands of unique individuals who are part of one community, this DU community, and even the community beyond the DU walls. I always like to acknowledge that. And we all work towards goals. We all work towards our personal goals, some collective goals. So what are some of the ways that we can celebrate our community? And how can we keep celebrating one another in a mind as a community in a way that we cheer each other on, and that we are respectful, and that we are empathetic, and we're more sympathetic? How do we do those things? So Provost Clark, I'll start with you this time.
Thank you, Stephanie. So in reflection on your question, I was thinking, for me, the central way that we build community and support community are through the things that we've spoken of earlier about the community of care. I do think our COVID response, again, led by Sarah Wadamura and significantly by Corinne Lengsfeld, has demonstrated, has reflected this community of care, and it has been responded to in that way. So that's where I would start. I think other ways in which we show care for our community and come together as a community would be around events like the arts or music, sports, lectures. All of those come to mind as ways that we come together and have a shared experience and a shared sense of delight, often delight at new ideas, delight at the art performances, delight at our sports prowess among our students. And another way, and I'll just conclude on this thought, is simply enjoying our campus. We have an extraordinarily beautiful campus, and I love to walk around our campus, and indeed I try to walk to work as often as I can. But I also, as many of my dean colleagues and other colleagues will attest, I love to have walking and talking meetings. It's just great to be out walking the campus and seeing people and interacting with folks as you walk across campus. So I think that's a very meaningful way to build a community and take advantage of. Someone yesterday said 360 days of sunshine. I had previously heard 300 days, but it's now been inflated. It's 360 days. So get out and enjoy the sunshine.
There you go. Right. Chancellor Haefner.
Yes, inflation affects everything apparently, and including the numbers of sunshine days that we have. You know, I need to take a play out of Mary's playbook there on these walking meetings, because I think on a beautiful day that would give me a lot of joy, because the campus is beautiful. It's of course been always a tremendous asset as we have brought prospective students to campus. And by the way, we have one of those visits this Saturday, I think. So we're looking forward to hosting a bunch of families here who are thinking about the University of Denver. And once they get on the campus, there are really good odds that they fall in love with the university. They see themselves here in one form or another. And that's the special magic that happens because of our landscapes. And of course, our facilities team does a marvelous job at maintaining the beauty of our campus and removing the snow on a snow day like this. Building community. Mary said it all, right? There's traditional kind of ways that we enjoy each other, whether it's a performance at the Newman Center for Performing Arts, or the athletics, or a lecture that is, one of those incredibly intellectually stimulating events. But I will always remember now, way back in, I guess it was August, we were just kind of welcoming people back from the summer, and there was a great sense of optimism. The Delta variant was manageable at that point in time. But we had a day where we brought all these food trucks along the circle on Warren Drive, right in front of Mary Read. And people poured out, I don't know, between 10 and 2 and enjoyed each other's company. There was music there. And there was a variety of different foods that you get, from, Mexican food to Japanese food. And but really what it was the incredible feeling that everyone had of coming together again, reacquainting in ourselves, engaging in small talk, even though we had those opportunities via technology and Zoom, but being face to face, being able to sit down on a table across from each other was a very special and warm event for all of us. So I'd certainly like to see some of those come back in the spring when the weather gets a little nicer, to enjoy each other's company. I also want to call out the You Rock Awards. I think this is a really important example of how we can pause and, pat someone on the back for their great work that often, goes unnoticed by the university. And that just leads me to think that, all of us whether, we're faculty or we're in administration or even students could pause and just say, thank you for your work. It's a powerful thing for a faculty member to hear a student say thank you to them for their lecture or their course materials that they have done. It often happens 20 years after they've graduated, and that's a very special moment. But even in the middle of a course, right, a student can express gratitude. A faculty can express gratitude to the staff who support themselves so much in terms of scheduling and rooms and all these other important features. And staff can thank the students because of their being here and who we are. And administration should be thanking everyone because after all, without faculty, staff, and students, who are we as a university? I think also I'll just kind of close in saying over the last several months, we've been working with how do we provide more flexibility to our employees. And I think the remote work policy that we're piloting is a really good example of that, and what we're learning from that through hearing from the people who are on remote work assignments and those who can't or have chosen not to be remote. I think that's a really healthy way of thinking about the community. But I also know that there are some other areas where we can create more flexibility. And I'm excited that some of those can be kind of low-hanging fruits. And so I am excited to think about how our division of human resources can help the rest of the campus think more flexibility when it comes to our employees. So those are just a couple of examples, but the community building, the community of care, as Mary mentioned, is at the heart of really what we're trying to do with the C+V and everything else that's out there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And actually, both of your responses ties into one of the questions that we've received from a participating community member. And the question is, how can we as community members of DU get connected to different people on our campus? How can students, staff, and faculty do this together as a collective? And are there groups or events, that can be taken advantage of? Mary, you want to take that one?
I was going to say in that regard, and you had asked us to be thinking in advance of things that we're looking forward to, most looking forward to. And I'd say my ideas align with this individual's question. I am most looking forward to the celebrations that we have in the spring here at DU of our staff, student, and faculty achievements. There are any number of events, smaller receptions, larger luncheons, and other gatherings where we're celebrating our community, and we are celebrating our staff, our faculty, and our students. So I'm looking forward to that. That's where I met a number of people for the first time late last spring in person after all of our Zoom experiences. The other thing that I'm looking forward to most, and again, it relates to staff, faculty, and students, is bringing folks up to the Mountain Campus. I'll be going there next week. I'm not sure how excited I am because it's supposed to be -7 on Wednesday morning. But I look forward to bringing folks to the Mountain Campus to enjoy what I've experienced as the serenity of that space. There are spaces on the Mountain Campus where all you hear are the breezes in the aspen, and the aspen shimmering in the breeze. And I would love for everyone to have that experience. So that's one of the things that I'm most looking forward to. And I hope that resonates with the folks who are with us and who asked the questions.
Wonderful.
I'll jump in and answer that question too about what I'm looking forward to here. Well, first and foremost, I'm looking forward to returning to some kind of new normalcy, whatever that looks like. As we talked about, I think, where the Omicron variant is today, I think there's a sense of optimism that we could be entering springtime and summertime and even the fall, maybe with a little less of the COVID mantle hanging on our shoulders. And that might mean that we are able to relax some of our protocols and enjoy each other's company and, more of a normal sense. We know it won't go away. We know that this is going to be with us for a long, long time, and that there will be still challenges ahead. But there's this sense of optimism that I'm seeing out there, and I look forward to that. Like Mary said, the Kennedy Mountain campus, I would also put in the four-dimensional experience. Provost Clark and Vice Chancellor Todd Adams is leading a great team of other individuals, along with Associate Vice Chancellor Brandon Busby, to really frame out what the four-dimensional experience is. This is a differentiator for the university. And I think it gets to just tremendous learning outcomes for our students, both in the classroom and outside the classroom, and really helping them develop life skills that they will use to navigate their careers and their lives in the communities in a really exciting way. So I'm happy to see that. And that serenity in the mountain campus is palpable, right? I think there are going to be some terrific ideas coming from the faculty of how to use that space. We know that the experience of our students when we immerse them in that will be life-changing for them, because they'll be there supporting each other, belaying each other on the rock walls as they climb, all kinds of different activities that will build bonds that will last a lifetime, quite frankly. The other thing that I'm really looking forward to, and this is really, well, it's not just specific to me, but I am really excited about working on our campaign. This is a sort of a nuts and bolts piece of my job, but it's a really large and important part of my job, going out and working with donors, taking the needs and the priorities of the universities and matching them up with the aspirations of donors is challenging, but also a real joy. And with a private university where there's a substantial tuition, we know that scholarships are going to play a massive role in our campaign moving forward. And the idea that a donor can have this dramatic impact on a person's life by creating a scholarship that allow them to have access to the incredible education that they'll get at the University of Denver is going to be a powerful message as part of our campaign. And I look forward to really accelerating the work in the next couple of years for us to have great success in that regard. It's a story. I get to tell a story about the university and a story about our students to our donors that gives me considerable joy and fulfillment in my role. So those are a few things that I'm looking forward to.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those things. We continue to get some great questions from those who are participating with us today. So here's a question for either of you. It says, we can all agree that those who work here are dedicated to the mission and the students. But can you talk about how university leadership is seriously addressing, hold on, I gotta scroll down here. Seriously working to address staff vacancy and staff compensation that is competitive and reflective of their value to help DU realize our mission and fulfill the vision that you have for the university. So this is about retention, compensation, taking care of our staff and faculty and those who are
Absolutely. Here. Absolutely. And both Mary and I are involved in this this topic on almost a daily basis, if not a daily basis. The staff vacancies, and to some extent, some faculty vacancies, the resignations, right? This is impacting every organization. and it's impacting all of higher education. I was on the phone with all the presidents and chancellors from the state of Colorado, and there's not a one of them that isn't impacted by the changing workforce. The number of vacancies is extraordinarily high for all of us. It's a huge concern, and it's a huge risk for the university, because our employees, our staff, and our faculty are, the core of how we deliver on our mission. And so we have to think of this as a critical need that the university addresses. I mentioned a couple of those that we're certainly looking at, trying to create more flexibility to accommodate the changing times and the needs of our employees, not just through this pandemic, but well beyond our pandemic. Technology has made it possible for us to accomplish so much and allow employees to have a little bit more balance with their families, which is so important that we've already talked about here. Compensation is a big aspect of it, and we are experiencing a real need to think critically and strategically about compensation. So I think the university will be addressing compensation in a strategic way and really getting a handle of where we are in the marketplace. It's challenging for us, for sure, given that we are so dependent on tuition dollars, but it is a high need, and we are working to try to really get the data that we need to have to address it holistically. Mary, do you want to add anything to that really great question?
Sure. So really just to underscore what you've said, I do think that addressing compensation needs will be a major imperative of our budget development moving forward. And as folks on the screen may or may not know, folks in the call may or may not know, as Chief Academic Officer, I also work very closely with our Chief Financial Officer in building the budget. And I can say that compensation will be a major building block of the budget. As I hope everyone knows, we're looking forward to a return of merit pay this coming summer, starting July 1st. And we've made a recommendation to the board, which I'm optimistic for in that regard. We also have earmarked monies to address any findings from the pay equity study that has been ongoing for some number of years. It predates my arrival at the university, and it's time to bring that process to conclusion. And we have earmarked funds in our budget development process to address any findings from that study. I do think more broadly, we need to think about our strategy relevant to compensation and relevant to where we are in Colorado vis-a-vis our neighbors, not only in higher ed, but more broadly. As the individual has indicated in their question, our staff as well as our faculty have other options, and we want to make sure that we are recognizing, valuing, and honoring their work here at DU.
Thank you for that. There were a couple of people that asked questions around this issue, so we appreciate your responsiveness to that. Pivoting back just for a moment to the idea of freedom of expression, we have a question around that. And so, Provost Clark, the question is, what place do you see for staff relative to freedom of expression and shared governance concepts? How are shared governance perceptions affected by representation on the board or lack thereof?
Interesting question, and I'm sure the Chancellor has thoughts on this as well. I'll say that in our freedom of expression principles, which Chase has very thoughtfully posted in the chat, it applies to all community members. So it applies to students, staff, and faculty. It is a commitment to a vision of freedom of expression for all of our community members. I, along with the Chancellor, have visited the Staff Advisory Council, have visited SOCA and other affinity groups. And I mentioned that by way of saying we have enjoyed robust conversations in those settings, really, as I understand it, in furtherance of shared governance, that folks have been able to share with us their questions and concerns, and we have taken the opportunity to seek to respond in a open, transparent, thoughtful way. So I do think those freedom of expression principles are demonstrated through those types of engagements and exchanges. With the Board of Trustees, I know that there are avenues by which staff experiences and points of view are brought forward to the board, even in the absence of having a staff representative to the board. Different colleges and universities frame their Board of Trustees differently. I've had experience with those boards that have faculty representatives, staff representatives, student representatives, and then I've had experience with those who use a more indirect method of sharing staff, faculty, and student experiences with the board. So there are many models in that regard. And what matters most, in my estimation, is that those points of view are being brought forward, heard, and responded to thoughtfully. I hope that helps address the individual's question or concern. And Chancellor, I don't know if there's something you'd like to add to that.
Well, and I just want to, I guess, reiterate the structures that we have here at the university internally, right? So we do have a very strong faculty senate that is part of the shared governance environment. We have an undergraduate student government and a graduate student government organizations that have a part of the shared governance ecosystem here. We also have a very strong staff advisory council, and I would love to see that voice amplified as an important member of the shared governance community that we have. I think the university, and especially the leadership, takes the voices of staff advisory council very, very seriously, and it is an organization, not the only way to provide that input and feedback, but it's an important one that we want to always bring to the table when we're discussing various different initiatives, whether it's the mountain campus or whether it's civil discourse as well, because it affects the staff. So there is this structure, and that structure is discussed, and of course, and represented in the conversations that we have in our board meetings as well. And I think Mary did summarize it extraordinarily well about the various different models that are out there for the trustees to manage and govern the university in its own fashion. And I know that the committee structures allow these kinds of issues to be discussed. They are very focused on the staff vacancies and the Great Resignation, because they know it's impacting DU just like they know it's impacting their organizations. So there's a good exchange of information that happens with the input of the staff during these meetings as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those responses. I think at this time, I'm going to invite Chase back. He's going to give us some closing comments and some directionals with regards to some further ways to advance questions that perhaps we didn't have time to respond to here today.
Yes, thank you so much. I learned a great deal from the conversation just about both you as leaders and your stories and experiences, which we know affect people's lives so much, and then how we stay connected as a community. So I'm leaving the conversation very inspired, and I appreciate the questions from the audience so much. And I know everybody on the call does, because we know there's always challenges, roadblocks, things that we want to work on. And so thank you so much for providing those questions. And again, thank you to Stephanie for hosting the conversation today. We truly appreciate it. And for Chancellor Haefner and Provost Clark, we both appreciate your leadership so much. I know sometimes when you're leading, we forget to say that, but thank you so much for always listening to us and making time for community members. And with that,
May I say back at you? Thank you for organizing C+V, and thank you, Stephanie, for facilitating such a thoughtful dialogue. So thank you. I know Chase has some public service announcements to provide, but I wanted to be sure to provide my thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Echoing that. And Hiba in the background, one of our Community Plus Values graduate fellows, and Tremaine from IT both helped put this event on. And so we're so thankful, everyone, that we do. And if you wouldn't mind visiting the Qualtrics forum link, we always want to try to make sure we're listening to community, hearing feedback, and making changes when necessary. So there's a brief post-event survey. We do encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram so that we can share with you about events, programs, and resources that are coming up. And lastly, we're really excited. We're going to have 2 Power Pack conversations, this one, and then this coming Tuesday, we will have the Black History Month, Heritage Month conversation that will be led by Dr. Chris Witt, and we're really excited for that combo. It's building on what's been already talked about in the wonderful MLK events and community talk that followed. And we're really just trying to make sure none of these are one and done, but that we're listening to community. And as always, we're trying to be with C+V gluers, amplifiers, and connectors. So if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to us at our social media channels or communityplusvalues@du.edu. And with that, have a good day, all. Stay warm and stay safe. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.